Yevomos Daf Mem Daled, in the Mishnah, Arba Achim Nusum Arba Nashim. So we have the Mishnah on Mem Gimel Amud Beis right at the bottom, and the first scenario is that the mitzvah that we saw earlier, that the mitzvah al gadol to do the yibum, that really he's zoicha even if there are multiple yibums to do that family. So let's say Nebuch, 4 of the brothers died, and as the Gemara points out, it has to be that there are other brothers as well. Otherwise, no chiddush that he's going to do all the yibums. Let's say there were 10 brothers total, and 4 of them passed away, and so each one of them has a wife that needs yibum, and the older one, the gadol, is going to have the mitzvah, even though you could say, look, you did one, leave one of the other mitzvahs to someone else. No, mitzvah begadol, that the oldest one has the mitzvah, even if it's multiple. So Abba Achim Nasun Abba Noshim Umesu Im Rotza Hagadol Shebehem Liyabim Es Kulam Harishus Biyodoi. He is allowed to do that, and the idea is that this would be really his mitzvah. Now, what about the reverse? So if somebody has 2 wives when he passes away, and the brother that does even mace, so there's no mitzvah on the second one, and fakir the patters, so either chalitza, even one is going to patter the other. And here the Mishnah comes and tells us that there's a preference in who to do yibum to and who to do chalitza to. If one of them was already a usher to Kahana, meaning Reuven, who died, had married 2 women, and one of them was a divorcee beforehand. So she's already asura l'koyin. So if he's planning to do chalitza, he shouldn't do chalitza to the one that's mutter to the koyin, to the kshera. We tell him he has to do chalitza to the psula and not to the kshera, because if he does to the kshera, he's actually ruining something, right? She was already kosher and he's ruining it. And if he does the yibum, he's going to be miyabin to the kosher one. Now, l'chayre could do yibum to either, right? It means that's what he could do for the kosher. But really, there's no reason for him to do yibum to the kosher more than to the psula, right? And in fact, there's a little bit of a svara simply on market, on supply and demand, right? If it happens to be a place that has more kahanim, okay. If it happens to be a place that has, if it's a place that happens to have more kahanim, so really he should do even yibum to the gerusha, because he's not a kohen, so he can do yibum to the gerusha and to the psula and leave the kshera to kahanim because she's almana, right? But there is that that's right. That's not from the svara of you're ruining something. You're simply, there's an Eitzah Toiva there as well, but that the Mishnah doesn't mention. Obviously, there's also, he may want one more than the other. One may be more matim to him more than the other. But that's a separate thing that the Mishnah doesn't talk about. So as we mentioned, the first Gemara mentions that it has to be other brothers, otherwise there's no chiddush. And the second Gemara says our shus biyadi. So the Achrayim deal with the wording of the Mishnah, harishus biyadi. There is permission for him to do so. He's able to do that. I mean, it's a mitzvah for him to do it. L'chayre, we should say it's a mitzvah for him to do that, not just harishus biyadi. If he wants, he's allowed to do it. It's a mitzvah for him to do it, because mitzvah b'gadol rishon, right? The mitzvah is by the gadol. L'chayre, that's the seeming what the Mishnah is saying, right? If the Mishnah is saying that the mitzvah begadol, so why does the Mishnah say such a language of harishus biyodai? If we want, then the rishus, then he has rishus, but it's not. It's not saying that it's a mitzvah for him to do it. Now, what we're going to see over here, there's a big machlokes. We've seen this multiple times already. Do we say that there's an equal mitzvah? First of all, do we say there's a separate mitzvah for chalitza as there is for yibum? Or do we say there's a mitzvah chalitza, there's a mitzvah yibum, the mitzvah is yibum? You're not going to do the mitzvah, so good. So actually, there's no way to get around and doing nothing. So mamela, you have to at least do something, so you have to do chalitza. So you have to pater her. But really, the mitzvah is a yibum. B'makam yibum, chalitza is not a mitzvah. Or do we say no? That there's a mitzvah like this and a mitzvah like that, whether it's the same mitzvah or separate mitzvahs. We talked about this towards the beginning. So that's going to be relevant over here in this next Gemara. So Gemara said, at first ask, V'shav kile? And we allow him to do this? Now this language, what would you say the meaning of this language? What's the Gemara trying to say? That we wouldn't allow him. Right? We would stop him from doing it. But the maskana of the Gemara seems to be, at least, in the let's leave it for now. So the mashmois of the kasha is v'shavka. We allow him to do that. We have to stop him. We have to tell him no, he may not. Right? That's the v'shavki le. Max, how do you understand v'shavki le? We allow him more, meaning like, why do we let him do it? Meaning, do we stop him? Meaning, literally not allow. The Havamina is, we should not allow him. We should tell him, no, you may not. I'm not convinced.
I guess I saw more of like a guy with like a thing that he's gonna marry all four. Not so much that the Gemara doesn't think that he should be allowed to. Clearly, the Mishnah says that the Rishus is in his hands. Clearly, he's allowed to do it. But the question is, like, why should we let him? There's other people available to do the mitzvah. Well, why give it to him first, even? Right. The second one.
So Gemara says, "Vatani b'lun d'arbaisa." V'korol iziknei iroi, and they call him the elders. So they call him to Basin. There's a mitzvah for him to come to Basin, and not only does he have to come to Basin, hein v'lo shluchan. They can't send the shliach. They directly have to go to Basin and v'dabro elav, and they speak to him and lamed shemasila etza higenesla, that they advise him a good advice, and they say to him, shemaya hu yeled v'hizakena, if he's a child, and meaning he's young and she's elderly, hu zakein v'hiz yalda, or vice versa. We say to him, malacha etzel yalda. What do you need this for? It's just not the right age. It's not the right person for you. Go to somebody that's like you. You don't cause a fight in your household. So the mashmois of the kasha, the simple reading of the kasha is that the Gemara is saying the masiyah le'etza toiva, which I would have learned the brisa just means Eitza Tova, I mean, we give him advice. I don't think it's a good idea. Sure, you want to do it. It's your mitzvah. But we just don't think it's a good idea. Masila Eitza Tova would seem to be that it's just bad advice. Or we give him good advice, we tell him don't do it. But that's not Lishav Kile. And more so, the Mishnah, that's not a question on the Mishnah, because the Mishnah said Harashus Biyadai. That's not a stira to Harashus Biyadai. We tell him, if all we do is give him good advice, but ultimately he's allowed to do it. So there's no contradiction to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, if he wants to, Harashus Biyadai. So we say, yeah, but we're supposed to give him advice not to do that. Okay. But it's still, if he wants to, Harashus Biyadai. The mashmois of the Shakla V'Tari in the Gemara is that when there's a problem, if the Mishnah says Harashus Biyadai, really not, because we're going to try and, I don't know if we actively stop him, it doesn't seem that way, but at least we try and persuade him. Really, don't do that. No, really, but I want to. No, really, don't do that. We we tell him it's just not the right thing.
I thought the one Shakile was before we said it was Efshalei.
No, so Mamela, the Gemara says, 4 is Efshalei. But I'm asking, at what point, at some point, there's a Leishavkile. Let's say it's Cana and Yolda, right? So that what does Leishavkile mean? In that, great. So that's a chiddush in halacha.
Yeah, okay.
I understand that's a chiddush in halacha. It's not so pashut that there's a Leishavkile mamish. Definitely a lot of Mefarshim hold that it's just a we tell them it's really not a good idea. Yeah. In the wherever the Masin Le'etz Tov is, they say it's an Eitz Tov. Yeah, don't do that. Right? You want to say that? It's your mitzvah.
Guys impoverished. He wants to marry 3 women. We tell him like it's Tov.
Right.
So when would we tell him not? You're gonna say is a Cana or like is it after the first one? After the second one?
No, the first one. If it's a skena, the one that's older, we say don't do it. Don't do it.
So we say that right away. So he's going to do the mitzvah with the oldest one. We say,
nah, that's not the right one for you.
Ready?
Right? Yeah, it's not the right one for you. She's too old.
The first wife.
She's too old for you.
But if there was another 3 wives, we wouldn't say no to that.
No, also not. Even if it's only one. This Bryce is saying, even if there's only one.
Then we would encourage him to do if it's not the right thing.
Correct. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
There's nothing to do it for then.
Right. No, the Gemara is being medama to 4 and say so 2 by 4. It's like that's too much. We should tell him it's just not a good idea. The Gemara says, oh no, he's a guy that he can do it. He has the means.
Does not say the financial chesed goes the other way. Women support, so more wives
yeah. More. All right. So it's a Karanoira and a few others that they're learning that when the Mishnah said Harishus biyadai, and Achronim ask on it, like I don't know how you're learning that, but they learn Harishus biyadai meaning since it's his mitzvah, he's allowed to take it as far as he wants. It's his mitzvah. You can't stop him. It's his mitzvah. You wouldn't even tell him an eitzah. It's his mitzvah. And the mitzvah yibum, you're gonna have to say mitzvah yibum is greater than mitzvah chalitza. Now, the chiddush of the Gemara, what's the chiddush of this Gemara? The chiddush of this Gemara is that really we have a situation where you're telling somebody not to do a mitzvah based on an advice. Since when do we tell someone, look, it's just financially going to be very hard for you. 4, it's going to be financially very hard. Don't do this mitzvah. Or, look, it's a great mitzvah, but it's not gonna suit you well. This is not your kind of mitzvah. Don't do it. Don't shake lulav. It's just like it's hard. What kind of thing is this that you masila eitza toiva? Now the truth is, some people ask the question the other way around. Why do I need a special limud for Yevama? It's not a din in Yevama. It's a din all around. We know the Gemara tells us that pshat in lifnei lasita michshol doesn't only mean a blind person. It means just not to give an eitzah ra, to give somebody an eitzah tova. So this is a general mitzvah.
So is the mitzvah the same for the second and third? Beyond the first Yevama, is the mitzvah the same level?
The mashmayis in the Gemara is yes. The mashmayis in the Gemara is that this person has an equal mitzvah on the second and third and fourth Yevama as the first. It's not the same brother, so each one of these households have to be reestablished. The mitzvah would be the same, and yet we tell him don't do it. Or even if it's only one, let's say there's only one brother, one died, he had a wife, and that wife is 20 years older than him. We tell him don't do it. I mean, don't do it. He has a mitzvah, and he's not married yet. He's a 20-year-old. He wants to. He's like, all right, I'll do it.
But the truth is that for a regular marriage, if people thought it wasn't going to work out, they would encourage them not to get married.
But there isn't a particular mitzvah. Over here, the chiddush is.
There's still a mitzvah to get married.
But not with this person. Here, there's a particular mitzvah. We say, don't do it. We're telling the person, you have a mitzvah to marry. The Torah says you have a mitzvah to marry this person, and we're saying, don't do it. That's a chiddush.
It's so clear that it'll end up in much like being some of the answer how people write a mitzvah with an Eitzah Tova is because Hashet that it'll end up being worse. Like you're gonna a lot more favor.
Yeah, from a hashkafic perspective, the answer would be, the strength of shalom bias and the need. Like I can give a nice schmooze of like from that perspective of like, look. There's a mitzvah, but if the mitzvah is going to mean that there's going to be misery in the home, right, for the rest of the days, that's not what the Torah meant, right? So from a musar ashkafa kind of perspective, we could say that. That's the part. Don't bring in something. That's not what the Torah wants of you. That you should do the mitzvah of yibum and bring a struggle into your home every day. That's not what the Torah wants. Right? In this particular case, that's just not the appropriate way to do the mitzvah, so it's not. So that's from a Musar side. From a purely pshat side, the vart is that this is a special limit in Yibum. You're right. Generally, we have a lifnei yiva l'sita michshol that has halachas with don't give a eitzah ra, give a eitzah toiva. Sometimes I'm not mechuyev to give an eitzah if you're not asking me. If I see you doing something, and you're not asking me, you're deciding to do something, mechates have to tell you. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. If it depends if it's an eitzah ra for someone else. Like if I tell you not to do a partnership with someone, it's a good advice to you, but you never asked me, and that person is losing out. So for that person, it's good advice. So mechates, I should save you more than I should save him. Right? No, but that's if he asks me. That's a leisabit. That's a leisabit. The leisabit is where it's mamish in a danger. But if it's not a good eitzah, it's not a good eitzah.
It's not eitzah.
Yeah, there's levels, right? So in katata, if it's just a question of is it good advice, bad advice, so I have to get involved. Here, the chiddush of the Torah is this is not a general lifnei iver kind of question. This is a general mitzvah. In the mitzvah of yibum, the Torah says, based in, make sure it's an appropriate yibum. The Bryce is learning a special limud that based in it's mutalam based in to assess and to make a suggestion of whether it's a good idea or not. We never find that you would give advice against the mitzvah. Yeah, you're right, but the Torah never tells me to. Here, the Torah specifically, there's a limud in the mitzvah. The mitzvah yibum says, don't do this. So ein chanami, maybe in some other type of mitzvah, it wouldn't be it's not my issue. It's not my issue to do it. Right? They're already engaged. To give, I'll tell you, to answer your question, when somebody's dating, right, and they're asking me advice, it's going to be very different than when they're already engaged, or even for sure already married. Right? I'm not going to say something negative. I'm going to try and build it and try and make sure that it works. Here it says no. It's a katata. Don't do it. Don't do it. So, and I think that in pshat, besides for the shalom bias issues and we see how the value that living with the katata is not worth it, but I think in pshat this is the Bryce is saying this is a specific din in Hilchas Yibum. The Torah was megala to us that there's a chivam based in to make sure that this can be done. Now, the Rishonim.
times, right? I mean, there are times like for us, like the act of mitzvah for years, right? Or like, we try to convince them out of it, right? We're trying to stop and do it because that's what we're supposed to do. I mean,
yeah, but there could be that we want to know that they're for real. In other words, not lav dafka that it's because of Eitz Tova or Eitz Ra. Could be it's an Eitz Tova topic. Like if they're not persistent and they don't really want it, who tells you that it's an Eitz Tova? If they're just on a whim coming in, so then it may not be an Eitz Tova. So I need to tell them, no, it's really not worth it, so that I can know that it. So there, I don't know if that's mamish the same, but there would also be a limud, right? We know it from a limud. Here, the limud tells us this. Now, there's the Rishonim deal with after Cherem Ben Gershom, even before Cherem Ben Gershom, whether or not this applies even with one wife. Just if somebody's married already, has one wife, and wants to do yibum, do we tell them no, don't do it? It's not a Eitz Tova. Because the Shulchan Aruch paskins in Siman Aleph, and there's a long dibros Moshe Ramoshe on Yevomos over here. Has a long shtickle, very long. A lot of the shtickle in dibros Moshe are long. There's a long shtickle on in Siman Aleph. The Shulchan Aruch says, and the Beis Shmuel over there brings from the Rishonim already that it brings katata. We know that why are two wives called tzaras? Because tzara zulazu, it brings a fight into the household, and being moisef even one wife to another wife is a katata. So why does the Gemara say, oh, if he can do it, so then it's a Eitz Tova, it's a Eitz Ra anyhow? And Ramosha asked us as a question. We see the halacha is that it's an Eitz Ra, right? We should tell him it's not a good idea even for one. So must be that it was in a place that it was not such a. It was considered normal. It was expected, right? It was expected that somebody marries. He's going to marry 2, 3, 4 wives, and so it's a normal thing. But anyway, it says for more than that is already everywhere is going to be problematic, and as the Gemara explains. But the emphasis that the Rishonim say there's a ritva. There's a Agos Mordechai, there's a Ruah. They say even without the Cherem Rabbeinu Gershom. First of all, Cherem Rabbeinu Gershom, based on that halacha that says that it's a problem to have another wife. They say really we should be for sure according to Rabbeinu Gershom it'll be us, and that's what Ritva says. Based on Rabbeinu Gershom, we tell them you're not allowed to marry another wife. And there's a mashmois in the Ritva that the Eitz Tova is that we try and stop him. We say, don't do that. No, I mean ultimately he could do it. If he does it, he does it. But we try and stop him. We tell him don't do it. But even without the Cherem Ben Gershon, it seems in the Rishonim that they say that we tell him it's a Eitz Ra. Don't do it unless the lashon of Tosfos Yantav is unless he is single, it's the same age, and he can afford it. We tell them we tell them Eitz Tova don't do yibum. That's the way that Tosfos Yantav says. So you see that even for a single, even one more. So really, Ramosha's kashas on the pashas of the Gemara. But the question is, why did the Gemara not say it? It must be that it was in a scenario that Taka it's expected to have multiple wives, and they say we see from Lavan, the Meshech Chochmah says it. We see from Lavan where after Yaakov had 4 wives, it says, but tonight I'm making a tonight on you that you don't take any more wives. So say 4 is a max. But Lamaisa in halacha we say even 1. That's it. No more than 1, and 1 is Eitz Ra. And the emes is in Daf Samach Aleph. There's a machlokes between Rav Ami and Rava. Rav Ami says that usher that there's an issa for a person to marry a second wife. Lisa Isha al Ishtai. And Rava says no, it's not usher. So they ask, wait, so are these Rishonim paskin like Rav Ami? Are they paskin like Rav Ami? According to Rava, it's not an isser. So then why we made mitzvah? So the emes is fakert. If we understand what we were just saying before, that it's a special chiddush over here, that it's Eitz HaTov, it's not Isser. If it was Isser, according to Rav Ami, then we don't need to come on to a special limud. We don't need a special limud. No, the special limud is telling us that hayois, that be'etzem it's mutter, like Rava said. It's mutter. But it's just not an Eitz HaTov. So therefore they say that the Torah is mechadish to us, that even though he has a mitzvah liyabim is greater than the mitzvah chalitza. Nevertheless, the Gemara says there's a special limud that you can tell a person, don't do the mitzvah that's mutal alecha. It's just not a good idea. How can you do that? You can't tell somebody not to do a mitzvah because it's not a good idea. Yeah, you can. In this place, the Torah is megala that it's mutal amesim to assess whether it's a good idea or not. And maximum they can assess is 4. But the Rishonim is saying that the assessment could be even 1. Now it's a chiddush that we would say that. But the emes is, even if we pascha like Rava, we see that in all the Tanoim Amoraim, see they only married once. And the emes is, the Torah says, and then the Torah says, it can't be multiple basar echad. It's not. It doesn't work. And as we see, Chazal say that it's a tzara and it's a katata b'beisai. It really doesn't work. Even the Gemara says that Rabbi Kiva saw the matronisa. The story with Rabbi Kiva, he came to Rome. He saw the matronisa. He laughed. He spit. He laughed. He cried. You remember that Gemara? So there. Why did he laugh? He said because you're going to end up. Being my wife, or you cry because you go. I don't remember, because you're going to be buried, or you're not going to be Gan Eden with me. I don't remember the whole Gemara over there, but it says his wife died, and she was misgayer and married, right? Why do you wait for his wife to die? I mean, if he had this ruach hakodesh that it's asid liyos ishtai, so then marry her. Multiple times we see throughout Shas that the Tanoim Amoraim, they only married once, because be'etzem it's a sheina higenes. Be'etzem it's not a good thing. It's a katata, maybe katata bebeisai, like we see in the first Semen of Shulchan Aruch. Even though we paskin in Kufnun Daled in Even Ezra, the Shulchan Aruch paskins like Rava that it's mutter, but it doesn't mean that it's a Eitz HaTov. We don't paskin like Rav Ami. It's not osir. It's only also because of Cherem Ve'ina Gershon. But even without the Cherem Ve'ina Gershon, the Beis Yosef brings that it's still bad advice. It's still not advisable, and that's the chiddush over here. The Gemara is saying that it's mutal on beistin, and this is what the Rishonim are paskening. It's mutal on beistin to be matzia in this particular mitzvah, to say don't do the mitzvah. And the mashmos of the Gemara is to the degree that we stop him. We try and stop him. In fact, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, that if somebody insists on doing a yibum, then we tell them, the way to do yibum is, she has to wear the shoe, and you take off the shoe, and this is all the process of yibum. And he does a chalitza, thinking that he's in the process of yibum, and then we say, done. Now you can't do it because chalitza is done, and she's asura l'cha, and we fool him into it because we try and stop him. That's what we see from the Torah saying that this chiddush over here, that we that we have to try and do what we can to stop such a marriage. The Cherem Ve'ina Gershon on this one is, he says that just not to have a second wife, also to have a second wife, period. The Cherem exists.
Yeah, Basaracha, which you're mentioning, it's like theoretically, let's say the Yevomos ex or late husband could have been her Basaracha. She doesn't have one anymore.
No, for the Yevomos it may be. It may make sense, but it has to make total sense, because otherwise it's a katata bebesa, right? And the vart is let it be appropriate. If Beis Din has to assess whether it's appropriate, you're right. It could be that, taking everything into account, it is appropriate, even if she's 15 years older or younger or whatever it may be. That's possible, right? if you look at the marriages that happened immediately after World War II, I mean, everything was appropriate, right? It was, he was 15 years older. It doesn't make a difference. He was married before the war. People had no family. They had nothing, and it was a Eitzah Toiva. We see also Taisus in Kedushin. The Gemara says that also that it's also to marry a katana and without seeing. And Taisus over there talks about that in Europe that it was so dangerous for Yidden to be anywhere, and people died, and it was famines and hunger. Anybody that had a penny that they could now give a dowry and marry someone else, you do it. None of this applies. Why? Because all of these are isurim or mitzvahs based on what's best advice. Best advice is appropriate when you have the luxury for best advice. But when you don't have the luxury for any, the best advice is go do it, right? Just do what you can. And saying a chanami, I think to your point, it may be for the Yevama that this is the best advice, and then we have to look at it and say it could be taka, even if there's going to be a little katata, and he wants and she wants, but that's the best she's going to get. That it may taka be kadai. Okay.
Classmate in high school, his grandmother got married at 8 in Persia. I guess 7 she was growing up. They got married very young.
Yeah, in a lot of the Arab countries, that's part of what happens. Back to regular programming. So the Gemara says, "V'niyabim the tarvai." So the Gemara goes into the limud of how do we know that there's a mitzvah of only one yibum. So the man died, he had 2 wives, only one of them is a mitzvah yibum. And then we say, okay, so take the one that's kshera, or take the one that's psula, or yibum, chalitza. And then how do you know that only one chalitza? Now the emes is, this brings that back to the yesodis that we learned in Zika. Be'etzem and Zika, there's in the first part of the Mishnah, each woman be'etzem has a Zika, their own Zika. Even mitzad the 2 Yevomas, klape each one of the women, there's a separate Zika. She has a marriage, her marriage got passed over. She has a marriage, her marriage got passed over. The Yevomin, the brothers, 1 brother, 10 brothers, there's only one Zika to them because there's only one brother that died. His one Zika is the only one Zika that passes on. So there's no tzad be'etzem that we should say that when he broke that Zika, that the brothers should now have a separate mitzvah. So that the Gemara doesn't have a tzad. So for sure, mitzidai, his Zika, when he either did yibum or chalitza, that's done. But now what happened to this other woman's Zika? She had her own kiddushin to the dead brother. That's where the Gemara's question is. Why doesn't she have her own Zika? So the Gemara says that shuv lo yiv. Since it says mitzvah that asher loibana beisachiv, but loibana is loibana and kivish loibana shuv lo yivne, or if he did a yibum ba'isechad u'bayna ve'ena bayna shtei bat. Fine. So that's the mitzvah for him. What about for the brothers? Now we understand that if this woman has her own Zika, why don't we say that one of the brothers should be able to do a separate yibum, right?
So if you're understanding that anyway, like the gotta be the one Zika that he did do the
So this we learned earlier. We saw in the Rishonim earlier that the Achreidim Masber, the vart of that what he's doing and how he pops others, that he's doing a Zika for. He's doing. Heyos is only one Zika from the one dead brother. Be'etzem, his Maisa, whatever Maisa he does, Yibum or Chalitza, is a shlichus for the others as well, because they're all in one Zika. Klape the Isha, that one Zika should apply to to both women, but there's only a question on him. So that's the way some Achronim learn that. I think, and then the Rosh Yeshivas, that's the way they say that. Klape each one of the women, we have to see that the one who took hold of the Zika on behalf of all the brothers and is acting with shlichus, maybe he has a Zika to both, right? Both women have a Zika, but there can't be a separate Zika. He has one, and one of the brothers have one, because there is no Zika. There were no two husbands. There was only one husband. There were two wives. There was only one husband. So that's one way to answer that. In the Rambam, it's interesting. The Rambam has in Siman, in Perek Aleph Halacha Tes, he writes that the reason why there's only one chalitza and you can't do the others because one yibum, and then it says why is in Halacha Yud Aleph he says uva oleo and not on sarasa. So there's a mitzvah say and a lava baba chalal say. So the Achronim all ask, why did the Rambam have two different limudim in Halacha Tes and Halacha Yud Aleph? Various different answers given. But one of the answers given is this idea that the Rambam is addressing two separate parts. One, what's his iser that he can't do another yibum or chalitza to the tzara, and that's because for him there's a yavay aleha to her and not to the tzara. There's a separate one of the binyan for the brother, that any brothers, that's an issue for for the rest of the brothers. That would apply to the other brothers, and you need a separate limud for each one, because I would think either he has a right, since he already owns the zika, he can apply it to either one of the wives, or that the brothers, okay, he's done with his zika, but maybe one of the brothers still have a right because they also had a zika, and this woman has a separate mitzvah, so maybe that zika would be separate. All right, let's jump to that right before the Mishnah. Here, Rebbe taught that there's a concept of you shouldn't pour out meibor, right? Meibor, you have water in your canteen, and you're done. You drank your fill. Like toss it, but other people are thirsty. They don't have what to drink, so don't do that. Now. What does it mean from here we learned that? First of all, how do we learn that from here? Specifically, Kanshan Rebbe, so Rebbe's teaching this here. And really, this is a general halacha. We already know, there's a general concept that if something is a benefit to you and no loss to me, so Zen you over here, I'm not missing anything because I'm tossing the water. I don't need any more. So it's loy chaser, but zen nene. So that's a general rule. We already know from Fasisa Yashav Toiv.
How could two women be equal?
That's me. No.
How could two women actually be equal? I understand there's fine. So there's one's kosher, one's psula. Fine, but I'm saying as far as
if he's doing chalitza, he's doing chalitza,
sure,
right? So we say you're doing chalitza. Don't passel up the woman that's mutter to kanis, that's mutter to kuna. Passel up the one that's already passel anyhow to kuna, right? So to him it makes no difference. To him it makes no difference whatsoever. Do chalitza this one, do chalitza that one. That's not going to make a difference. And so we say, Kanshan and Rebbe here. Rebbe taught us a special din of bar, right? Don't pour out water. Made bar, there's somebody else needs it. This is a general din of, it says in Torah, right? You have to be considerate and do what's right. We learn from there Dina Daram Metzra and so many other dinim that it's just don't, if there's no loss to you and there's a gain to someone else, so let it be. It's a simple din. Why do we need a special limuni? Now, I don't really know how this compares to Maybar. I don't have a good answer to that. But one thing is clear: it's a special. We need a special limit here. Rebbe needed to teach it to us by chalitza, because there you actually have, and there's a mitzvah. You can't tell somebody when something is not a mitzvah. You're drinking water. You're buying a field. Zenen zelei chaser. Yeah, it's dinei rishus, right? It's things that have no concept of mitzvah. But here it's a mitzvah. It's my mitzvah to do. Me'echetesi, that you tell me do this mitzvah and do the mitzvah this way, not that way. It's not a normal asisa yashav toiv. It's not a dvar rishus. It's not just a business deal. This is my mitzvah.
How the mitzvah is to the doctor choose the woman.
No, not. But it is my mitzvah. I have a mitzvah to do chalitza with this woman.
Like you have mitzvah to a woman. Why is that part of the mitzvah? Which woman he does?
There is no. I'm not saying that it's a part of the mitzvah, but it doesn't. It's lav dafka. That just because we say asisa yashav atoiv, that there's a midas sadoim klape dvar rishus. Right? Somebody, it's empty anyhow. It's useless anyhow to you. So let somebody else use it. That's great if it's a dvar rishus. But who tells you that applies to mitzvah as well? That's the chiddush of Rebbe. So maybe there's a chiddush specifically over here. It's not similar to other places. The chiddush over here is that even though we say everywhere else, kafir amida sadaim, here there's a chiddush that even by a mitzvah, we tell you kafir amida sadaim. Maybe I can say it's my mitzvah. I have a mitzvah to be chaylis this woman. It's true. I could also be chaylis that woman, but I have a mitzvah to be chaylis this woman. How do you know that's a loy chaser? So it's my mitzvah. What? I have a mitzvah. I have an obligation.
The mitzvah has to be going up against something. The mitzvah's not going up against the Yesodom, so there's no reason to assume that it would affect it, right? The whole issue is that I thought you were saying that there's only Yesodom. Oh, this situation, there happens to be a mitzvah in the room. What does it do with the Yesodom Shabbat? The Yesodom is been called home, and there's also a mitzvah going on.
Because you can't tell me it makes no difference to you. It doesn't make a difference in finances. It doesn't make a difference in hana. But it's mitzvahs lav lehenisn. It's not based on a mitzvah hana. This is not a ma'isa hana. This is a ma'isa mitzvah. It's a ma'isa mitzvah. So you can't say zenen of zelech chaser. It's an actual mitzvah of mine. So maybe I have a right to do the mitzvah. It's a mitzvah of mine. I'm a kaima mitzvah. So that's my ratzon to do this mitzvah. The chiddush of Rebbe over here is that not as a midas adayim. There's a separate.
But it's not an obligation to do it on the.
No, a key mitzvah. You're right. It's not a chiyuv mitzvah. It's a key mitzvah. So mehecha tesi that counts as a midas sadoim. That counts as a zenen of a zel lechaser. It's not about hana. It's not a mitzvah. You could say zenen of a zel lechaser. You have no gain, and this person has a gain. Yeah, when we're talking about gain, we're talking finances. We're talking about dwellings. We're talking about property. We're talking about. So then you can tell me it's based on hana. You have hana or not. Mitzvah slav lehenis. I don't want to get into the amkis of what does it mean mitzvah slav lehenis. But the point is it's not about hana. It's about my mitzvah. I have an obligation to do chalitza or yibum. That's for sure. I have an option. I have a mitzvah, kiyum mitzvah. I do a mitzvah when I'm doing this. Who says that in such a case that doesn't apply? I'll just explain what I'm trying to say. The rules of midas sadoim are not equal. For instance, the Gemara says that if somebody wants to squat in your apartment and says it's empty, you're not renting it out to anyone, right? You're not renting it out to anyone. There's no loss to you. There's a gain to me. The Gemara says, yeah, there's dust in the house, whatever. The walls get dirty. Like I don't want it. Yeah, it's not equivalent to the idea is there has to be nothing for you, no reason for you to do this. But if there's something there, then we don't say it's midas adai. That's a halacha. So over here also, you're right. Is there a greater benefit to me, this over that? No, but it's not. It's irrelevant whether it's a greater benefit. I have a mitzvah. I'm doing a mitzvah. Who tells you that Midas Adayim applies? The chiddush of our Mishnah is, even aside from the mitzvah of the concept of Midas Adayim, just don't do it because somebody else, there's a benefit to the world. There's a benefit to others. Do it in a manner that there's a benefit to someone else. I think the Aruch LaNer said, I saw it earlier, I don't remember who said, I think the Aruch LaNer said that generally by Midas Adayim, and this is a similar idea, but it's from another angle. Generally by Midas Adayim, we say there has to be a beneficiary, right? We don't say just you
have to know who the beneficiary is.
There's a claimant. Yeah, there's a beneficiary and a claimant. So the Mashal Bar Metzra. I want to buy a property. If the neighbor says, "Look, I want to buy it," so I am a neighbor, and to me, it's beneficial. So then we say, "Okay, I'm going to have to pull back so that you can buy it." Right? Why? Because to me, buying this one versus another one is no difference. But to this neighbor, it makes a difference. Over here, there isn't necessarily a beneficiary.
Opening up a larger pool.
That's it. But there isn't a. It's Ba'alma.
Not only is it.
I don't know of a kohen. I don't know any kohanim in town even.
No, but not only is it a benefit for her, but it's also a benefit for all the men.
I don't understand, but I don't even know a kohen.
You don't need to know a kohen.
That's the point. That's the chiddush. In civil law,
more women available, which means that there's
in civil law, in a lot of constitutional law and civil law, you have to have a claim. You can have things that are tossed out, which is totally illegal, right? Things that are unconstitutional that the government does. But if there isn't a claimant, somebody can't show that they have loss from it.
The Supreme Court case. Right?
Yeah, Supreme Court case.
Like last week.
There are many, constantly.
There's the big thing. There was the what's it say? I'm going to get the word. The head judge.
The Chief Justice.
Chief Justice. What's his name?
Roberts.
Right. Like he was 1.8. He just had a whole thing where like they posted that the person even has a claim of $1 is enough for a Supreme Court to render a psak.
Right, but you have to have some. You have to show some.
It had to be $1, but the chiddush was that even $1 is enough. But now they're allowed to. That counts enough. Right,
but the point is, you have to have a claim. Otherwise, even though that in the world it's a problem, it's not. The Constitution doesn't give you a right, but you have to show that you are a claimant. For Midas Adayim, it's the same thing. Midas Adayim, there has to be a claimant, somebody who says, to me, this is a loss, and to you, there's no loss. Or to me, this is a gain, and to you, there's no loss, and therefore, there's a Midas Adayim. But there's no Midas Adayim, there's no din of, don't pour out May Boyroi, because someone may need it.
But why can any man claim it?
Because what do you mean? You can marry, you're not a kohen. To you, it makes no difference. You can marry a divorcee. You can marry a chalutza. To you, it's nothing.
Right, but there's one less woman available for somebody else.
For somebody else, so what?
There's no class action lawsuits.
Yeah, no, there's no midas adayim on that. You don't have a claim. You don't have a claim. So over here, the chiddush over here, our Mishnah. That's why the case of Mei Boirei. Yeah. It doesn't say v'yesh mishu hu shetzorech loy. There's a tzrichim loy. There's a general need. Yeah, there's a general need, but there isn't a particular person who's making a claim, and that's the chiddush over here. That even though there's no claimant,
and if there was,
then for sure there's a midas adayim. Then midas adayim would apply.
What if there's a kohen living in the community,
and he makes a claim? So maybe there's a midas adayim. He says, "Leave it. I don't have so many people to marry. Leave her for me."
If he comes and says, "Leave my option open,"
then even without our Mishnah, we may have known it. You're right. Rebbe's chiddush over here is what?
Assuming she's on board,
right? That's right.
So can it be any guy saying, "I know a kohen"?
But that you're not a claimant. I know a neighbor of yours that wants the land. Nobody's making a claim. That there has to be someone who's making a taina that's coming with a tviyah. Midas Sadoim is not just open. It's not just open-ended. Midas Sadoim is I can't just make a party in your backyard because I know somebody who wants a party in your backyard. So you have to let there has to be a claim. There has to be a claim. Over here, the chiddush over here is that even though there's no claimant, that still there's a din of the chiddush of Rebbe. All right, we can get into mamzerus and what counts as a psul.
We're not getting anything. Didn't think of it now, but it's all the current events.
Oh, the force, whatever, the non, yeah.
All these like Twitter run-ups.
Yeah, but Baruch Hashem, it's working. It should continue to work. All right, let's leave it at that.